Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Carney hosts Trump at the G7 summit underway in Kananaskis. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump now on Canadian soil at the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta. It's Trump's first visit to Canada since winning back the White House last fall. It comes as he has imposed tariffs on many Canadian exports to the United States and amid his frequent comments about wanting to make Canada the 51st state. Air Force One touched down in Calgary yesterday. Trump was then helicoptered to the summit site in Kananaskis. His one-on meeting with Carney just started. Prior to leaving for Canada, President Trump was asked about a topic that has been thrust to the forefront of this summit, the war between Israel and Iran.
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, Prime Minister Carney spent some time meeting with other world leaders who are attending this summit, including the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who was in Ottawa before heading to Alberta. Carney welcomed his UK counterpart by talking about Canada's shared history with the United Kingdom.
We share values, we share governance. We are in a parliament inspired by the Westminster tradition, but it's much, much more than heritage. This is a foundation of prosperity for all our citizens going forward, and a prosperity based on those shared values expressed through the future: artificial intelligence, critical minerals, new partnerships in security and defense, but all in the pursuit of sustainable prosperity for our citizens. And if I may, just on a personal level, I've learned a lot from the Prime Minister over the years. I've been a great admirer of his and the values that he's bringing to bear to his government and to internationally, particularly as we go to Kananaskis for the G7, are those that we will be promoting.
Prime Minister Starmer spoke about how the two leaders share a mutual respect and noted that the war between Israel and Iran will now be a major focus for this summit.
The history and joint working of our countries is phenomenal. For years we've worked together as Commonwealth members, as independent, democratic, sovereign countries working alongside each other on issues of security, defence, trade, the economy, you name it. And we think alike, we work alike. And I think that's not just a reflection on the past. I think it is very much needed in the here and now, and how I think we can forge our future together as we go forward from here. It is particularly timely with the G7 because it is the opportunity under your leadership at this G7 for us to work with our colleagues and other leaders on the most important issues of the day. Obviously, the conflict with Israel and Iran is centrepiece, and this provides the opportunity to talk to our co-leaders about the fast-moving situation and to make our strong case together that there must be de-escalation of this conflict in the interests of the region and of course, the world.
Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, is also at the summit. She held a briefing for the massive contingent of news media there. She said the summit's agenda is being shaped by the war between Iran and Israel, and also mentioned that she'd spoken on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Iran should never acquire nuclear weapons. So in the call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he described the situation. We were both, of course, aligned in the fact that Iran should not have nuclear weapons without any question. Of course, I think a negotiated solution is in the long term the best solution. So we discussed the topics, and as we discussed, of course, also the Prime Minister described to me the theater itself and how the development is very important. In the same phone call, I insisted and urged that humanitarian aid that is not reaching Gaza has to go into Gaza.
Canada's new Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, did her own briefing for reporters in Kananaskis and was asked to outline Canada's position on the conflict in the Middle East.
Certainly, that is going to be a topic that the leaders attending here will likely want to engage on. And what is most important, of course, is to realize that diplomacy and the reduction of tensions will be in service of regional stability. And to that end, I spoke with my representatives or counterparts in France and England and Germany, as well as in the region, Oman and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as Jordan, within the last 24 to 48 hours. And the view, generally speaking, is that de-escalation will be the most productive way out of this. So that's a question that the leaders themselves will undoubtedly take up, but it is also a question that is so pertinent given the issues that have risen just in the last few days alone.
The summit officially began yesterday. It wraps up tomorrow, and we'll have more on the meeting that's happening right now between Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump coming right up. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
He's our eyes and ears on the ground this week at the G7 Summit in Kananaskis. Cormac McSweeney joins us with the very latest, the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for News Radio. Hi there, Cormac.
Hi, Rob.
Prime Minister Carney is meeting with Donald Trump right now. The pair spoke just moments ago. What came out of that?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Supposed to be just a quick photo op, but of course with Donald Trump, anything can happen, and they ended up taking about 8 minutes worth of questions. President Trump says trade is on his mind at this G7 summit, and specifically trade with Canada. He says something is achievable here, and he's seeing if we can work something out today at this G7 summit. That kind of goes against what we had been hearing in the lead up to this. Expectations were a bit lowered that something could be made. There was hope that there might be some progress on the trade front. And so now Donald Trump says he wants to land a deal. He was asked what's holding things up with these negotiations. I will point out they've only been negotiating for several weeks now, but nonetheless, he was asked that question, and he said nothing's holding it up. He said they just have different visions of how to move forward. He's a tariff guy, and he described Mark Carney's plan as more complex. So they're going to try and work something out, possibly here at the summit. We'll see what happens. We're waiting to hear from more officials after hearing from Donald Trump. He also went on about Russia and Russia's involvement in the G8 and talked a little bit about Israel, Iran as well, which is, of course, going to be another big topic of discussion today.
Okay, so let's listen to a little bit. President Trump speaking about the ongoing trade negotiations between Canada and the United States.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something. Hopefully,
Do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Days or weeks, but how realistic is it that something could be announced by the end of this summit tomorrow, Cormac?
Well, the expectations in the lead up to this were that we're not going to get some sort of announcement. So that's what made President Trump's comments today a little bit surprising, that they're going to try and work something out. So it's kind of unclear what will be achieved here, but it seems like there could be progress at the table. It's definitely a more positive sounding message from President Trump rather than a negative one, and he wants to get some trade deals done. He set himself a timeline for trying to get some trade deals done. He needs a win in the U.S. right now politically, and so getting a deal with Canada or others could potentially be something that would be in his favor right now. So we'll see what happens. If not a deal at this summit, which was not expected, possibly at least progress between the leaders. The Chamber of Commerce told me yesterday as well that just the fact that the leaders are speaking, we know that they were having phone calls in the lead up to this summit, talking about these negotiations privately, but those one-on-one talks are huge steps in terms of trying to get some sort of at least vague plan underway before more of the details can be worked out later.
Okay. Set the scene for us, Cormac, what it's like there, the media contingent that is following this event, and what's being done about protests.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of security, a lot of officers here at the media center in Banff where I'm centered at the moment. Everywhere you turn, you're seeing some RCMP officers. So security is really tight here. There are media from around the world. Thousands of people have come here, delegations, media, et cetera, for this G7 summit. So it's packed, but there are separate sites. This is how the G7's always worked. There's a main international media center. Then a select few get chosen to go up to the actual summit site. Each day it could be a different group of media that go up there. And then from that group, an even smaller amount of media get picked to go into the room for things like Donald Trump's bilateral meeting with Mark Carney. So a little bit of the nuts and bolts of how these things sort of work when you're up here. In terms of protests, I know that there were some protests in Calgary yesterday, some pro-Khalistani protests who are not happy that Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, is attending this summit. He should be arriving later today. They had blocked part of a highway. There are sectioned off areas for protesters. There's supposed to be some environmental protest that's going to be taking place in Banff today as well as Calgary, I believe. It's unclear yet how big that may be, whether it's going to be hundreds, thousands, or whether they'll be rowdy or just peaceful. So we'll have to see how that develops today as well.
Thank you for your time. Cormac McSweeney in Banff right now, our parliamentary bureau chief at News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Just a few more notes and sound bites emerging from Prime Minister Mark Carney's meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump today at the G7 summit in Alberta, their second sit-down meeting since Carney won the federal election in late April. Prime Minister Carney welcomed President Trump to the summit and wished him a belated happy birthday as well.
Happy birthday. A few days short.
A little bit.
A few days short, but didn't have a chance to see you on the day. Happy birthday to the U.S. military as well, 250th, and this is the 50th birthday, if you will, of the G7. This marks the 50th birthday of the G7, and the G7 is nothing without U.S. leadership, and your personal leadership of the United States, many issues. Geopolitics, economic, technology, and working hand in hand with the United States, Canada and the United States, and the other G7 partners with your leadership.
Prime Minister Mark Carney welcoming Donald Trump with some birthday wishes. Then, as is usually the case, Trump held court with the news media in attendance, taking some questions from news reporters. He was asked about the situation in the Middle East and whether the United States would intervene.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
Have you heard any signals or seen any messages from intermediaries that Iran wishes to de-escalate the conflict.
Yeah.
What have you heard? What have you heard from the Iranians?
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war, and they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
And what would you say, in your opinion, what would it take for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict militarily?
I don't want to talk about that.
The U.S. president also spoke about ongoing trade negotiations between Canada and the United States.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something, hopefully.
Do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
Donald Trump and Mark Carney during their meeting today at the G7 summit in Kananaskis. Now, on the Israel-Iran news, that sparked a sharp sell-off in the stock markets on Friday. However, there is a bit of a rebound happening today with all the major indices in positive territory, including the TSX main index up 135 points, so a gain of 0.5% today. The S&P 500 up 1%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, which was down almost 800 points on Friday, has pared some of those losses. It is higher today by 367 points. That's a gain of 0.8%. The crude oil prices, which spiked on the Israel-Iran news last week, are softening now, off about 2.5%, with the West Texas oil futures trading at $71.21 US a barrel. NASDAQ tech-heavy shares up today 284 points, and the Canadian dollar. Just let me check the Canadian dollar. It's just about flat, but it has really been on quite a run lately. It's been boosted by those higher oil prices. The Canadian dollar, 73.80 cents US. Still ahead, we will have our Newsday panel with the big topic today, of course, being the G7 meeting in Kananaskis, and what a win would look like for Mark Carney and the Liberal government as well. Just a week remaining in this session of the House of Commons. And then MPs will call it quits for the summer. So what can the government say it's accomplished in this shortened session of Parliament, and what is still left to do? Lots to talk about with our Newsday panelists. Again, that's coming up right after the latest breaking news. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio. First one of the week, our Newsday panelists are here. They include Jordan Pickett, Vice President at Blue Sky Strategy Group. How are you today?
Great, Rob. How are you? Good to be here.
I'm good. Say hello to your Cross Island rival, Nick McRoberts, here from Hill and Knowlton. How are you guys? I feel like this time of year... hi, Nick. Yeah, great to hear from you.
You too.
This time of year, we should be doing battle on a harness racing track, maybe this time of year. But look, it's great to have both of you back today. The big news story in the country is G7. Mark Carney hosting the G7 in Kananaskis. Trump in Canada for the first time since winning back the White House. The backdrop, 51st state, tariffs, the prospect for a deal on trade and security. There's a lot of moving parts here. What does a win look like for Mark Carney? If you're Mark Carney, what do you want to be able to announce at the end of this summit? Nick?
I would imagine, we've all alluded to this idea that there's some kind of deal in the works, that there's some framework for what a new security and economic relationship with the U.S. will look like. I would suggest that after the G7, they may be in a position to make the details of that more public. And seemingly after the comments that we just heard from the president, where he talked about a meeting or a deal with Canada as a primary focus, and it's something that the two countries can work out. Seemingly that we're closer to that. So some sort of announcement around what the details of a new deal with the U.S. would look like.
Jordan, what would you say?
Yeah, so in looking at that meeting today, heading into it, and I certainly think the government probably has some goals, and one is just to not let the whole thing go completely off the rails as previously happened at G7s that Trump's attended in Quebec would be one. But getting a deal with Trump on this is still going to be quite difficult. And the Prime Minister has his work cut out for him. I mean, Trump just said once again this morning that he's a tariff guy. He thinks tariffs are still the best policy. So I guess it's going to see what Canada can offer to get some type of exemption from this. So I wouldn't expect them to come out after a couple of days in this meeting and announce some new deal. I think they can announce progress on some talks and whatnot. And part of that is also because I think a lot of the summit's going to be taken over by the Israel-Iran war and global security. That'll be atop of that. So I'd expect that to have a renewed focus as well.
Yeah, let's listen again to Donald Trump on the possibility of some kind of breakthrough on trade negotiations between Canada and the United States. This is within the last hour.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something. Hopefully.
Mr. President, do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
How realistic, I guess, was it, Nick, to expect some kind of big announcement on a trade and security deal? There had been some news reports, that this is, the talks are happening at the highest level, leader to leader. But, how realistic is it that something could be announced, say, tomorrow, for example?
It's so hard to say just because no details of what that deal is have been released. Like with the new CUSMA negotiations right up until the end, there were details of that were leaking out and here and there, and this has been pretty tight-lid. So I don't think it's that realistic to say that, following this summit, we're actually getting a deal. But, crazier things have happened, and we're seeing right now the world is a pretty crazy place. So there's also a reality exists where Donald Trump just says, okay, yeah, this is one less thing to worry about. Let's get this done and move on. But who knows, kind of.
But do you agree with Jordan? He thinks a lot of the agenda may be overtaken by the current situation between Israel and Iran. Would you agree with that, Nick?
I think so. Just given what we're seeing, right? It's going to be a major. It has major implications for all members of the G7. And so, if there were to be a communique, which it doesn't seem like there might be, I would imagine it'll focus on more international security.
Okay, and just on that, Canada's position on this, Israel launching this preemptive strike against Iran and then Iran responding with counterattacks of its own. What have you thought, Jordan, of what you've heard from, for example, Anita Anand, the foreign minister?
So I thought her initial statement was quite weak. I mean, it didn't really. I suppose it's just given what Canada can contribute to this situation, more just a generic, okay, all sides de-escalate, please. But then the Prime Minister came out later to actually say, no, Iran has had we've had a concern about the nuclear program for a while. So I think we have to remember who the bad guy is in this particular situation, and that is Iran. And I feel like on the situation with Israel, on other situations in the Middle East, the government's been struggling to get I think there's been too much domestic politics at play. And I find the government has really struggled to find its footing on this particular issue. And so
what would you say to that? What would you say to that, Nick?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know what significant capacity Canada can have in this role when you compare it to something like the U.S. I do tend to agree with Jordan. I think what Minister Anand has come out with and said at the beginning follows a pattern of ministers coming out and speaking too early, and then the PM kind of having to walk it back in some respects. Right. And, I think that tact needs to end, as I've been saying for a while now, and hopefully with more clarity in PMO around who's actually pulling strings, we can rein in some ministers here.
Okay. Well, just a week remains in this shortened session for the House of Commons. Nick, what can the government say it has accomplished? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's introduced some pretty impressive legislation when it comes to border security, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to internal free trade and the One Canadian Economy Act. I think the government has showed interest in making sure that Bill C-5, the One Canadian Economy Act, can get through by the end of this week. I hope that all parties agree that we can get there. There's still a lot of work to be done, but now what this allows newly elected members and ministers to do is get out in communities. I know Calgary Stampede is coming up. I know Old Home Week back home in PEI is coming up. So it'll be good for those members to get out in their communities and continue to engage with constituents.
Jordan, what can the government point to as accomplishments?
I mean, I think this has been a June and late May of June of just a lot of pomp and ceremony. I mean, they had the king here for the throne speech, good communications win at least for the government, but still, there's been no budget. So when we're actually looking into the hard work and what Canadians can actually see, I don't think there's been a ton. Sure, they're talking free trade. They're trying to rush something through now. Remains to be seen if they'll get it done this week. But kudos to them if they do. And beyond that, yeah, I think it's just been a kind of a kickoff after the election to the new government. But the real parliamentary test will come in September when the opposition's back on their full footing.
Okay. What's left to do for the Liberal government? What can you point to that it would have liked to have gotten done, but just didn't have the time? What would you say, Nick?
I think maybe some more specific legislation on housing. I think that's been a priority that they've talked about, and we haven't seen a ton come out of there. And then what some of these bills that they've introduced, C1 through 5, do is they lay the groundwork for the bigger projects, right? So pipelines and port infrastructure and like I mentioned, housing. And so while they may have liked to do a lot of other big things, there just wasn't the time, and I don't think MPs from any side wanted to sit longer than they have to. So given the few weeks that we had of a new sitting with new MPs, I can't imagine that they would have wanted to attempt to push anything more in and really tire people out more than they already are.
Okay. What do you look at as unfinished work, Jordan, for the government?
Well, I think it's the work they haven't started yet, and that's getting a budget, getting
Right,
a budget out
okay,
together. I mean,
okay.
we're not going to come by the time this fall rolls around. It will be well over a year. It'll be about a year and a half before we've actually seen that, and I think Canadians deserve to know the state of the finances right now and what the government plans to do going forward.
This Bill C-5, not to be confused with Bill 5, which is kind of similar legislation that the Ford government rammed through the Ontario legislature, but this Bill C-5, I mean, this is the major projects legislation. It's an omnibus bill. And the government seems intent of getting this through the House of Commons by Friday, despite all kinds of concerns. I mean, Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, was having a news conference today alongside First Nations leaders. NDP MP Gort Johns was also there. Environmental groups were there. They're all raising concerns about this legislation. It's moving too fast. Do you think the government can get this done by Friday? By Friday? What do you think, Nick?
It's going to take some work. There's a motion in the House now to kind of speed everything up. But what's going to make sure that this can move past by Friday is that members from all parties vote for it and see the value in it. And I think, during the campaign, both the Conservatives, the Liberals, and all other members talked about the importance of building a strong Canada in the face of U.S. aggression. And that's what this bill does, is it lays the groundwork to be able to do those big, hard things that we've talked about on this show so much. Yeah. And so the Liberals want to push it through. The Conservatives need to show that they're also there and willing to do it, because this is how you get those things done that the Conservatives have also advocated for over the last number of years.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, Jordan, if when it comes to this Bill C-5, the major projects legislation, whether the Conservatives are the most likely dance partner. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they may begrudgingly, at least publicly, go along with it. Behind the scenes, they may not throw up as much objections, but it's going to be a lot on the stakeholder side, as it was in Ontario with the Ontario PC bill. Once it actually gets out there more, you're going to see Indigenous groups, other environmental groups. I think that could be a bit of a pain in the government side on this. As far as the House of Commons goes, I mean, I believe the government will have the votes to get it through. Nobody's really going to step in the way, and I don't think filibuster this entirely right till the end. I don't think there's as Nick said, I think people are kind of looking to get out of here pretty quickly, and if they see something that's inevitable, as long as they've been able to stand up and say their piece publicly, they'll start to.
We would like to start our vacation on Friday. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get this done. What can we do to help you get this done? Jordan Paquette and Nick McRoberts with us today. It's our Newsday panel. Let's talk about a little lighter fare. My gosh, it's hard being Jagmeet Singh. You lose your own seat. You lose the election. It's a stunning defeat for the New Democrats. Worst election performance in NDP history. And now you can't even go to a Kendrick Lamar concert in Toronto without having to issue an apology. Like, I have to tell you, things I did not have on my bingo card. So he went to the Kendrick Lamar concert in Toronto, and Kendrick has this huge feud with Drake, and apparently he was spotted, was all over social media at the Kendrick Lamar concert. Drake called him a goof. And Jagmeet Singh, think of all the things Jagmeet Singh should be apologizing for. Like, he should be apologizing to his party, all the MPs that lost under his leadership. And yet here he's actually apologizing to Drake. I went for SZA, he says, not Kendrick. I was born in this city. I love this city. But real talk, I get it. I shouldn't have gone at all. For me, it will always be Drake over Kendrick. Okay, so they're trying to make good. Okay. Meantime, tomorrow, Netflix will start streaming a new series about Rob Ford. I'm going to watch it. I'll binge it. Rob Ford, to me, was always an unlikely mayor of Toronto. Meantime, his brother, Doug, has won 3 straight majority governments in Ontario. Could easily win a 4th if the election was right now. This is Ford Nation. Rob and Doug, what are the secrets of success to Ford Nation? Jordan, very quickly on that.
Yeah, I think it's just some of that folksy sort of working class average personality style that they can appeal to. They've both been knowing it. Rob started this, gave out his phone number to anybody that wanted to. Very much, Nick, like I think PEI MLAs would be. You want something done, you call directly to them,
right.
Whether it's a raccoon in the yard or a pothole in your street, and he would show up and be there. So I think people appreciate that connection and just that. Politicians not just coming across as so stiff and scripted. So I think that kind of, sort of attracted people into them to at least hear things.
It's like retail politics on steroids. It really is. Nick, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's the same tact that my former boss, Lawrence McCauley, invented, right? You go to every birthday party, you go to every anniversary party, you go to every Legion event, you go to every funeral. And you just let folks know you're there. And like Jordan said, you don't get involved in jurisdictional issues. If there's a pothole to be fixed, you work on it. And if there's funding for, a national park, you get it done. So I think Doug and Rob Ford are the imitators. Lawrence McCauley is the originator. But
okay,
I'll be watching that Netflix special as well.
Yeah. Thanks to the both of you. Really appreciate the time today. We'll speak soon. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Jordan Piquette, Vice President, Blue Sky Strategy Group. Nick McRoberts with Hill and Knowlton. And Talkback is just ahead.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic is public education. And here are some questions today. Consider these just conversation starters. And we'll see how things unfold over the next couple of hours at 1-833-668-2577. Another school year is winding down. What grade would you give the public education system where you live? How did it perform this year for your children? How would you say the public education system is doing at meeting the needs of students and of meeting the needs of the staff who work in the public education system? If you have children in the public education system, how would you describe their learning environment, the school system? Is it meeting their needs? If there are shortcomings, what would you say those shortcomings are? 1-833-668-2577. And, of course, if you work or have worked in the public education system, how would you describe what it's like working in the public education system these days? What would you say are some of the positives? And where do you think things need to be improved? We wanted to get back into this topic today because, as we said, another school year is winding down and students and staff will soon be taking their summer holidays. And it's a major expense for taxpayers. Outside of spending on healthcare, spending on public education is a top expense for provincial governments. Total spending this year on public education by primarily provincial governments will total more than $73 billion. So a lot of taxpayer money is on the line. How is this system performing? Because there are some questions about whether taxpayers really are getting value for money when it comes to spending on public education. Spending per student, it's been noted, is up more than 40% since the year 2000, but still we see declining scores in standardized tests, especially in areas such as math and science. In Ontario, for example, there's been a long-term decline in math scores on standardized tests. Alberta has seen high school graduation rates decline over time. In Nova Scotia, there's also been a noticeable decline in standardized test scores, especially since the pandemic. In the education field, generally speaking, provinces say they're dealing with chronic staffing shortages. There is a growing shortage of qualified teachers. It would seem that many Canadians who once thought about becoming teachers don't want to be teachers now. They're choosing other careers instead. Current teachers are choosing to leave the profession in greater numbers. They are citing things like workload and burnout and high levels of stress and violence, increasing violence in the school setting. There are ongoing issues such as aging schools, outdated equipment, overcrowded classrooms, a lack of support for students, especially special needs students. To try and get a handle on some of these issues in public education, various provinces are trying different things. In the province of Nova Scotia, many years ago, they eliminated school boards. With the exception of some small Acadian school boards, there are no school boards anymore in Nova Scotia. In Ontario, the Ford government has been taking more control over local school boards, accusing large local school boards of not being able to manage their budgets and running big deficits. And in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith outlined an $8 billion investment in that province's public education system, but it also included funding for what are known as charter schools and building new charter schools and creating more classrooms for charter schools. Some people are against that because they see that as public money being invested in private schools. Now, teachers in Alberta have voted 95% in favor of strike action. They say the province's public education system is overburdened and underfunded, meaning there could be a teacher strike, maybe time to coincide with the start of the next school year this fall. We've seen similar votes in other parts of the country. But it's coming up to the end of another school year, the start of another summer vacation, and soon enough, the back-to-school shopping will begin. How is your public education system doing? How would you say it's performing for your children? If you work in the public education system, what's working well and where is it falling short? Our phone lines are open right now. The call-in line is 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. And if you've never called before, please mention that to us, and we'll make your call a priority. Again, 1-833-668-2577. Grade your public education system. Here on Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. And this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
With another school year winding down, how would you describe the state of the public education system where you live? How is it doing at meeting your children's needs if you work or have worked in the public education system? What's working about it, and where do you think things could be improved? What should be done? 1-833-668-2577. Talk back on a Monday. We'd love to hear from you today. Stephanie is up first, calling from Calgary. Hello, Stephanie.
Good morning.
Yeah, hi, Stephanie. What are your thoughts?
Well, I have a teenage daughter. She's going to be entering high school in the fall. And one of the main items I see is, in these, I'm down in Calgary in the southeast, in a fairly, middle upper class neighborhood where they build these communities and there's no schools. So you can have 20,000 people in a community with no schools. And so when they do build the schools, they are overcrowded by 20 or 25%. So you can have 40 to 50 students in one classroom, which makes it fairly hard to learn.
Gosh. I bet. Wow. Okay. So you need more schools, newer schools, more new schools to deal with the population growth.
Overcrowding, right? Underfunded for sure.
Okay.
My daughter's a competitive swimmer. She does miss a lot of school. And she can be gone for 2 weeks for a training camp and come back and be caught up in 2 hours. So what typically happens is what you see is that the teachers have to teach to the lowest common denominator of the class.
Okay.
And so students that are ahead are sitting waiting for the rest of the class to learn, or you have kids that are missing school just because. So there's a lot of underfunding where kids that are, if you don't fall, you know, in that typical median range, if you're an underperformer or an overperformer, as you could call it, there's just no money there for those kids to receive what they're needing.
Okay. Now, I'm sure you're aware there's been this strike vote by teachers in Alberta. I'll just ask you specifically about that. I mean, do you have some sympathy for the teachers in Alberta and some of their complaints? Or
I do know quite a few teachers in elementary and high school, and there is limited support staff for them, non-teaching items where they normally in the past wouldn't do a lot of admin work, or we don't, in our junior high, they don't even have a janitor. And so during the day when the kids eat lunch, they call it a litterless lunch, meaning put your garbage back in your bag and take it home.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Gosh, I've never heard of that.
Also, that seems to be typical in the schools in our area. I call that no money. I don't call that litterless lunch. That's just
right. That's it's kind of like, this is where we ran out of money.
Yeah, we ran out of money, so take
by
your
lunchtime.
home.
Yeah. Right.
And
wow.
the response is from the school, well, don't you want to know what your kids are eating? And I said, well, if they're hungry, they're going to eat. That's just...
Yeah, I'm surprised they could even have class without custodial staff.
No janitors, so you
would
can't
think
put
there would be
garbage. There's no garbage allowed in the garbage.
Okay, you would think there'd be a health issue around that. So that's very...
And the other thing is, all the parents in the Calgary Catholic School Board, which is publicly funded, I need to point out, they do not, we pay for noon supervision, but during the lunch hour, there is no supervision. So we pay $30 a month for our kids up to grade 9, and they're basically herded into the gym. They eat lunch on the gym floor, and it's a bit of Lord of the Flies in there.
Gosh, that's quite eye-opening.
Kind of running wild, and they do whatever, and that's lunch hour. So that's where a lot of things can happen. There is no supervision.
Underfunded. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your call. Yeah, a few lines available there. Public education, our topic for the day. How would you grade the public education system? What's working about it? Where could things be improved? How is it performing to your expectations? How is it meeting your children's needs? 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback. The wait won't be too long. Karen also calling from Calgary today. Hi, Karen.
Hi there.
Hi, Karen. What would you say?
So you were talking about the charter schools in Alberta?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
So my daughter goes to one of the charter schools in Alberta, and it is a private school.
Sorry?
It's not a private school.
Okay.
Students get into it by a lottery.
Right. Okay.
All people, anyone who wants to have their child go there, they put their name in for a lottery for the first year they go.
Right.
And you either get in or you don't. It's not like a private school where you pay money for your child to go.
Well, it's not like a traditional ultra expensive exclusive private school. They're still...
I pay no different fees to my to the charter school she goes to.
Yeah. Most of them are nonprofits. They're nonprofits, right? And they don't charge tuition, and they have to teach the curriculum, but they're still rather unique as far as provincial education systems go.
Absolutely.
And
my daughter
the union,
goes to it.
Yeah, the teachers union doesn't like them. They think it takes money away from the traditional public school system.
Well, hearing the horror stories about the traditional public system, I'm kind of glad my daughter got into where she goes.
Why did you opt for that? Why are you happy that she got into the private charter school?
It was open. The junior high was opening for grade 7, which is when we start junior high. At the same year, she was going into grade 7. It has a STEM focus, so science, tech, engineering, and math.
Yeah.
So she has robotics classes. She has biomed classes. She has programming classes. So the curriculum is different. I mean, some of the courses they're doing, they're practically writing the curriculum and getting it approved by the Board of Education or by the Education Ministry because no one else does these classes. So,
Right, right.
I was fortunate. My daughter got in. She got in the lottery. But you kind of have to, if you want something special, you have to be looking for it.
Right.
Which I realize not everybody has the time, energy. I have one child, someone has four. I do understand that. But,
Yep.
I mean, it also takes those kids out of the high school, which means there's less kids.
Right. And what are the class sizes like in the charter school?
I believe in her junior high, her classes were low 30s.
Oh, low 30s. Okay.
Yeah. So now I'm hearing about 40s and 50s. I'm like, oh, yeah, she's low 30s. And in the high school, it depends on the course.
Okay.
So her basics, her math, her English, her science, her social studies are in the mid to low 30s. But if she's in a specialized course, it may be less. If she's in a very popular course, it might be a bit more.
Okay.
And
you would say it's would you say it's a superior learning environment?
I mean, yes, I'm probably biased.
Okay.
But
yeah, sure.
when Alberta does standardized testing.
Yeah.
So in grade 9, they did standardized testing, and I can't quote off the top of my head exactly where they were, but they were either first or second in pretty much everything in Calgary, provincial-wide, with the exception of schools that particularly, they pull students.
Okay.
Some schools that take, really good math and science kids and whatever. So it was just against other junior highs, same area. Now, we also have to, it's across the city, so we have to get her there.
It's across the city. Okay.
Yeah,
That's very interesting. I'm glad you brought up the charter school issue. I wanted to maybe get into that a little bit more as we make our way through the next couple of hours. Thank you for sharing that experience with us. Great to take your call today, Karen. Be right back. I'm Rob Snow, talking about public education today. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob
Well,
Snow.
the school year is winding down. How would you describe the state of the public education system where you live in? That's our topic for today. Elise, let's take a call from Halifax. Elise is on the air. Hi, Elise.
Hi, how you do?
I'm good. What would you say?
I would have to say that the school system here is an absolute crock of crap, honestly.
Oh, really? Okay. Why would you say that?
Well, I've got two kids going to the same school, one in grade 5, the other one in primary, and they are both learning the exact same thing in regards to phonics and letter blending and sounding stuff out. I had to get my oldest a tutor. Pardon?
By grade 5? Still learning phonics in grade 5?
They did not teach him that at all.
Wow.
The entire time he's been in school, they did not teach him that. They taught him individual letter sounds. They did not teach him that, TH makes a th sound or ER makes an sound. They did not teach him letter blending, so I had to get him a tutor to teach him everything that they didn't teach him thus far, that his 5-year-old brother is now learning.
Wow. Okay. What else?
He had an IPP done in grade 3, and as a result of that, they told him to rely on the speech-to-text option on Google on the Chromebooks so he can actually spell stuff properly, because they didn't teach him how to spell anything. He's in grade 5, almost grade 6, and the child has never had a spelling test. I've asked this every year since 3rd grade. When is he going to get a spelling test? When is he going to get homework? Why am I the only one at home making him do homework? Isn't this part of what he's supposed to do at school? Every year I've been told, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Nothing has ever come of it.
And what do you think explains that? What's behind that?
I don't know, but I've had teachers this year admit to me that the school board specifically dropped the ball with removing all of that stuff, and they have seen a decline in education of children. That they are not ready for the next grade because they barely learned anything.
Wow. Okay. So not a passing grade from you.
No,
for the education
honestly,
system in
I do
Halifax.
not believe.
Okay.
I do not believe my child has a 5th grade education. I would put it more in 2nd to 3rd grade, and that is exactly what his tutor told me back in February when he first started seeing her.
Okay. All right, Elise. Thank you for the call. Good to hear from you. The latest breaking news. Busy news day today. Coming up next. Then more of your calls on public education today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about public education. That's our topic of the day. Another school year almost in the books. How'd the school year go? How would you describe the state of the school system where you live? How's it doing at meeting your children's needs? If you work or have worked in the public education system, what do you think is working about it? What needs improvement? 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available there for you. Wait won't be too long at all. Love to hear from you today on the topic. Don is up next, calling from Calgary. Hello, Don.
Hey, hello, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Don. Good to hear from you. What's your opinion, please?
Well, first of all, I got a few points. I just hope we have time to get to them, so I'll be
Sure.
quick.
Take all the time you need.
But if you wanted a scoring, I would give the system about a 1 or a 2. And that's basically because the teachers show up and the school's open. But, I mean, I want to touch on funding just for a minute here, just to let you know, like I'm 64 years old.
Okay.
I own my own house. I've been a property owner since 1980. This year, my property tax, I'm paying $4,200 for my tax, and $980 of that goes to the school board, education system.
Right.
So when they say that there's no funding, I'm kind of a little bit flabbergasted because, like, I'm paying $1,000 for one house. I live in Red Deer, population about 110,000. So multiply that by all the houses in Red Deer.
Right.
I think that's quite a bit of funding.
Right. And it's about 25% of your property tax is education property taxes, right? Almost 25%.
Yeah, pretty close,
so.
Rob. Yeah, 25%. Yeah. And
Why would you give it such a low score? Why would you give the school system such a low score?
Okay, my number one complaint, so my kids have gone through school. Now my grandkids are going through school, so I'm reliving it all over again.
Right.
Like when my kids went to school, the school system was very good. But now it's just gone downhill, and I hear the horror stories from my kids and other kids and parents and such. When they allow the kids to start acting like cats and dogs in school, and instead of the school board stepping up and putting a stop to it, they put litter boxes in the bathroom.
Okay, so discipline. You think discipline is a problem? A lack of discipline?
That was the other point that I had. A lot of this, I feel sorry for school teachers, and I know some school teachers, so I hear their complaints. And that is the number one. Like, they can't even, punish them by standing in the corner or something like that. Time out, I guess they'd call it.
Okay.
So they because that's discrimination. And so, yeah, there's no discipline. The teachers aren't allowed to even raise their voice at the kids to try to get them in line. And now they're starting to wander around. They're dressed up like animals, and there's litter boxes in the bathroom, which also leads me to the no gender bathrooms. I mean, you get a kid that's 1 or 2, and he's standing at the urinal or something, and then a female comes in there, in elementary, 5 or 6. I just don't think that's right.
Fair enough. Okay.
And
okay.
then the other thing with a couple of callers ago, the lady was saying like she got a kid in grade 5 that's not grade 5 status in her books. And I think a lot of that is because another one of my beefs is they can't fail anybody anymore. And I've even talked to parents where they've tried to hold their kid back because they're not ready for, say, grade 2 or 3.
Okay.
And the school board, the principal would say, no, the kid has to move on.
Okay.
Even though the kid isn't, in, the parent's
ready.
mind, ready for it. And they really don't have a leg to stand on there because there are a lot of times there's no exams to see where the kids are. So, yeah, that's my main thing. Funding, I think the money's there. Maybe it's just not getting allocated properly through the government.
Okay. Yeah.
And, I mean, the government's always put money towards education. Every budget, every province, the whole country. So the lack of funding, I find really difficult to swallow.
You think there may be a lot of wasted money, or it's not being targeted in the right places?
Exactly.
For example. Yeah.
Right?
Okay. All right.
And then
all fair points.
Discipline, no failing, acting like animals.
Okay. All right. You've got a lot of complaints for your education dollars. Fair enough. We'll have to wrap up our conversation there. Thank you, though, Don, for taking part in the conversation. And there's lots of time to take your call as well today as we talk about the state of the public education system. 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available. One of them could be yours on Talkback today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How'd the school year go? How would you describe the school system where you live? That's what we're talking about today on Talkback at 1-833-668-2577 to James in Nova Scotia. Hello, James.
Hello.
Hi, James. I'm fine, thank you. What would you say?
I'm a teacher in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And so I can only speak for my province. But from what I understand, there's a lot of commonalities in many places. The idea that you can't fail.
Okay.
It's a complicated issue because they want to do everything they can to make sure kids don't fail, obviously. And there's the problem with a lot of these things is we're getting a lot of consultants coming in from either American-centered education stuff, and a lot of the research that is being used comes from American, either private for-profit education or the charter school systems, where they're allowed to self-select who goes in and who doesn't, right?
Right.
So the thing is, what works great in one school doesn't necessarily work when you're talking about an entire public education system for an entire province. And so this is part of the problem, is a lot of this stuff like this don't fail stuff, like legit, it doesn't really work. Now, you can fail, at least in Nova Scotia, you can, but the process is so onerous on the teacher. And I know one teacher who failed somebody in high school. The parents kicked up a stink, and that teacher had to go into the school board every single week for most of the year. And they had to go through each and every assignment, each and every test, each and every project, the rubric for it, what they explained, blah, blah, blah. And he had to justify every single mark they gave to this student.
Wow.
At the end of the day, the person at the board said, no, you were justified. This person deserves to fail. And I remember talking to her afterwards, and they said, I'm never going to fail. If a parent challenges me on that, I'll just pass them. I'm not going through that again. It was so much, like, it was crazy.
Okay.
And as far as this whole, like, you had somebody a little while ago talking about the dressing up like animals and litter boxes in the schools, that's a myth. That has never happened. That has been debunked so many times. The actual thing about the litter boxes was, yes, they were in the classrooms, but they were there, and this was coming from the States, they were there to help with active shooters and stuff. Like, they were there for students to use the bathroom. But if you're in a lockdown and you're there for hours and hours and hours, somebody's got to go to the bathroom.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You're not
all right.
That's exactly what it was there for. But some person saw it and said, "Oh, they're letting all these kids dress up like cats and everything."
That's crazy. Okay, let me ask you what. I don't know how long you've been a teacher, but what's it like being a teacher these days?
I still love it.
Okay.
I still love my daily interactions with my students. I mean, obviously, it's, good and bad, but everybody's job is good and bad. And I enjoy mostly my interactions with other staff. It's like any workplace. You get along with some, you don't get along with others, but you got to make it work. So that's okay. I'm finding that parents, this is a huge thing. Like, people talk about no discipline. Discipline starts at home. And I think, legit, I have taught across the board I work in a lot of different schools, in a lot of different environments, high school, junior high.
Okay.
And parents would be shocked if we had video cameras in the schools and could take a picture of and videotape what their kids are doing in schools, in classrooms. It is, there are, now I will always say, I'm very fortunate. Most of the schools that I've been working in over the last little while, really, really good, strong admin, strong staff.
Right.
Kids are generally good.
Okay.
But I do know other people, and I have worked in the other schools where it's like, I remember in the pandemic, right, when we had to do the masking in the schools, and the kids had to sit in their seats and they couldn't get up and move around and blah, blah, blah. And, the school I was at that time, those kids, man, they were the rock stars. They did it. They didn't like it. There was very little problems. I know at other schools, I talk to teachers, and they're like, "You guys are still doing the masking and stuff? The kids keep taking them off."
Okay.
The
All right.
parents aren't forcing them at home. So what, what are we going to do?
Okay.
Right?
I got to wrap up I have to wrap up our conversation there, but very enlightening. Thank you so much, James, for the inside account there. Really appreciate it. To Nick up next in Calgary. Nick. Hi there, Nick.
Hi, good morning. How's it going?
I'm good. Nick, your opinion on the school system, please.
First, I'm a new listener, and my points here are really quick. I got to criticize them for a lack of adjustment to what's going to be happening in the world here soon is artificial intelligence.
Right. Okay.
You see already job losses due to takeover in white-collar jobs. And my quick point here is the public education is doing a disservice to kids by continually influencing them to believe that the only way out is through university.
Okay.
And then completely overlook blue collar and dishonor it. I'm out of high school now 2-3 years, but I'm in a blue collar job and I'm using it to fund everything I have. And it's there's work out there.
Right.
Who can't sit still, kids who don't like academia.
Yes.
And they can be successful.
So more of a focus on maybe the trades, for example?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's
building
a
trades,
lack of focus on promoting the trades as a completely viable route to a very livable income.
And maybe more focus on how AI is going to change the workplace of the future and preparing students
absolutely
better.
Well, there's
AI.
no emphasis on creative thinking skills for working with your hands. It's all about computer work now, and especially the kids they're not excited to do mechanics anymore or welding, fabrication, but that's where the money's going to be in the next 10-20 years, because AI will be coming after computer jobs, accounting jobs, etc.
Okay. All right. Very good
I think
point.
there's a big lag in the education system at the moment.
Okay. Good point, Nick. Thank you. Glad you brought that up. 1-833-668-2577 to join the discussion about public education today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Describe the state of the public education system where you live. How is it doing and meeting your children's needs? Or if you work in the public education system, how is that doing? As an employee in the public education system. Paz in Calgary. Paz. Hi, Paz.
Hello?
Yes. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
It's Taz.
Okay. Go ahead. What's your opinion?
So I'm South African.
Okay.
We have British curriculum, and when I compare it to Canadian, I think it's very low standard.
Okay.
I think it doesn't set the kids up well. When we were in school, we used to have exams from grade 3, and that sets your mindset into dealing with challenges and tests and those kind of things. They don't do that here, and then suddenly when the kids are in high school, they're expected to study for exams when they don't have the tools of how to study. They're not taught it, and they're just like thrown into the deep end, and then everybody's hustling and bustling for tutoring. And I think it's I don't know. People say it's deteriorated from the time they were in school. One of my pet peeves are hearing elderly Canadians when they speak. They use your in a non-possessive way, which is so incorrect. And then you when you listen to that, you wonder what is the standard of education that they went through.
Okay.
British is very sharp in the English particularity. So I don't know. I feel it's pretty low and maybe gone lower, but I'm not sure if it was ever at such a high standard. Because I interact with a lot of people who've been through the system a lot, and I find like when just by writing things and the way they speak, there's so much of incorrect grammar. I don't think they focus on that here in school. They don't even teach the kids how to write. We were taught how to write alphabets correctly along the margin on the line from grade 1. They don't do that here. I had to teach my kids how to write, and I don't know, how come, they miss out on the basics, and then suddenly as they get big, they're like, you guys have to swim on your own, but one thing I do enjoy, one thing I appreciated a lot was the fact that they do focus a lot on learning to understand and learn through play. We did a lot of by heart learning, so we would memorize 5-6 pages and maybe understand about 2 of those, but that memory has helped a lot as you went through life. So that's the only pro that I like about the Canadian curriculum, that they make you understand what.
But you don't think
learn.
there's enough emphasis on what I would call the basics? You don't think there's enough focus on the basics?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, that's very interesting. And that it's maybe too soft. It's not tough enough by the sounds of things, in your opinion. All right. That's hour number 1 of Talkback. Interesting call so far. Let's pick it up in hour number 2 right after the latest breaking news. And share your honest opinion of the public education system. What's working? Where is it falling short? As we wind down another school year. 1-833-668-2577.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We've been talking about public education today here on Talkback. Welcome to hour number 2. I'm Rob Snow. Another school year is winding down, and we've been asking how you would describe the state of the public education system where you live. How is it doing at meeting your children's needs? And if you work or have worked in the public education system, what does it have going for it? And where could things be improved? Our call-in line, 1-833-668-2577. And if you've never called before, we love to hear from first-time callers, so just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. Every single phone line is available right now, so encourage your calls. The wait won't be too long. Whenever we talk about public education, we often hear about chronic problems across the country. And I guess one of the things we would like to know today is how prevalent these problems are in your local school system. Some of the chronic issues would include overcrowded classrooms. Hear that all the time. There are just too many students, not enough teachers, and not enough EAs either. In Alberta, for example, where the teachers, I would remind you, have voted overwhelmingly in favor of strike action, the union says it's not unusual for classrooms to have more than 30 students. The claim from the union is sometimes classrooms can have 40 students. There are supposed to be guidelines in that province for what a class size should be. 23 in the lower grades, 27 in the higher grades. In Ontario, there's supposed to be a cap on class sizes of no more than 24 in the lower grades, no more than 23 in the higher grades. There's also a cap on class sizes in Nova Scotia in the low 20s for the lower grades, in the high 20s for junior high school, as many as 32 in high school. The average class size across the country is reported to be about 26. Another chronic issue, working conditions of education assistants, EAs. The pay is not very good. Some school systems only offer casual work or contract work for EIs as opposed to full-time employment. The EAs say they're dealing with a heavy workload, having to support numerous students without much support, and it is increasingly stressful work, especially trying to help students with special needs. Violence in the classroom is a growing concern. We talked about that many weeks ago. EAs report frequently being assaulted. There have been grievances filed over the last few years with school administrations across the country. EAs also report not being able to deal with the increase in very complex medical and behavioral issues that they're seeing in many students. And when you put all of that together, what you get is a workforce of EAs suffering from things like low morale, high burnout, high rates of stress, and high turnover. Lots of high turnover in that position, education assistant. 1-833-668-2577 to Manny in Kitchener. Thanks for calling, Manny. You're on the air. Hi, Manny.
Hey, Rob. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they currently do not go to public school.
Okay.
My wife and I made the choice because of a number of reasons, but one of them seems to be, and I'm not sure if you heard recently, the Waterloo Regional District School Board had some kind of leaked document from a few years ago called Dismantling Whiteness.
Yes, I did read about that, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of being one of the main reasons, and that wasn't necessarily that document, but the feeling that our school system now is teaching children that activism is a productive trait, I guess, or that activism is a way to change the future. I think that children should be in school to learn core skills, which they weren't really learning. That was absolutely inadequate. So, it's I guess the job of the parents to make sure that we fill in the gaps. Didn't have to when I was younger, but I guess we have to now. That can also be solved with attention, but it's a lot. So the problems, I think, kind of boil down to like three things. Number one, they're teaching children to be activists, and this month proves exactly that at a lot of schools. Number two is, and it's a most recent thing. During COVID, children didn't matter. And we masked up and kept kids out of school. And, we were on being taught online, or that wasn't really teaching. It was some wasted years, I guess, for everybody. But the kids didn't matter during COVID. We spared children's lives for others, which now we're paying for in the violence and kind of dysregulation we're having in the schools with emotions. But also, number 3 is like, we're one of the richest countries in the world. I mean, we're hosting the G7 meeting. We don't feed children at school. My family came from a communist country, and what happened in that country was if the schools didn't provide any food to eat for the kids, people wouldn't even send their children to school. There was really no point. So what we even do now is like people are stretched to the absolute limit, and we don't even bother to nourish the bellies so the kids can actually nourish their minds. So the government, the previous Trudeau government had been signing these bilateral agreement with provinces to provide a national food program, school food program. They did, but it's a bit of a joke. The money started coming out a couple of months ago, but it's unbelievably inadequate. Like the provincial government gives 3 to 4 cents per child per day. That's the provincial government's. It's interesting. Olivia Chow, like a broken clock can be right twice a day. The city of Toronto is pumping over $20 million into a school food program.
Okay, all right, very interesting. But you would say there's too much focus on what I would call social justice issues and not enough focus on academics.
Absolutely.
That's a major complaint for you, right?
It's a major complaint, Rob, and I would actually even go further to say that social Marxists have hijacked our education system, and they are put into positions where you have our Waterloo Regional District School Board had an activist in charge, an admitted activist who was all over the map and had very little care for what we would call actual education. I don't need my school to mold my child's mind. I need them to teach them the basic concepts of language and mathematics, and I got the rest. So I don't need their help.
Gotcha. Thank you. Very good.
You.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. In many ways, some of these school boards, especially in Ontario, there's quite a battle happening in Ontario between the Ford government and local school boards, and I think that's at the heart of it. It's kind of become ground zero in many cases for the culture war. 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, with another school year winding down, we've been talking about the state of the public education system where you live. How would you describe it? 1-833-668-2577. Daylan in Calgary. Hello, Daylan. Hi, Daylan. No? Okay. Maybe not. Let's try Jennifer then. Let's try Jennifer in Calgary. Hello, Jennifer. Are you there?
Hi, Rob. Yeah, I'm here.
Yep. Yeah, good to hear from you, Jennifer. Go ahead. What's your opinion, please?
Okay, so I've thought a long time about this. I'll talk quickly and hopefully build some context. I think the public school system right now is as good as it can possibly be under its current model. I think it's fairly common knowledge that the public school system operates way back with the Industrial Revolution model, right? People coming in and grades and bells and all that kind of stuff. And there's been a lot of research about that. I myself am a bachelor in education. I have my Alberta teaching certificate. I've had it for like 20 years, but I've been a stay-at-home mom for a variety of reasons, from mental health and neurodivergency. Homeschooled my 4 kids. My youngest one is graduating next year. My 3 oldest are all on to bigger and better things, graphic design, commission artists, and financing. So they're all successful kids, but they've all gone non-traditional routes into that realm. So my support for public school systems is still strong because I think that they have a place in society. I do think that there are some pockets of problematic leaders and teachers within public education the same as you get anywhere else in any other field or profession. But as a whole, they're trying really hard. I think that the state of public education, though, it's kind of at its, in my opinion, its breaking point. It needs to be remodeled. Okay. And if you give me 2 minutes, I have an idea for the remodeling. I made a whole presentation. I sent it to Adriana Lagrange back when she was education minister. But
all right.
Of course,
very quickly.
On a local level.
Give me the bullet points.
I get back into the teaching fall, actually, and I want to get into my master's degree and then start researching this idea so I can get support and actually make change. Do you have like 2 minutes for me to share my idea, or
just give me 2 or 3 bullet points? Give me 2 or 3 bullet points.
Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah. Can you hear me? All right. I think we've had.
I'm just going to talk until you hang up because I can't.
Okay. All right, Jennifer. I'm sorry. We're going to have to move along. I think it's a phone connection problem on your end. Let's try. Joe is in Port Elgin today. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, loud and clear, Joe.
I can't agree with Manny more.
Okay.
I think that the school system sort of brainwashes our children. The way to go in the world. You need to have a university degree. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So that's my main thing. I don't think there's enough emphasis placed on skilled trades. Like all of my friends that have their own business in the skilled trades and the trade that they got into, they're all multi-millionaires right now. Some of them have sold their businesses and are retired like I did. And I don't think there's not even anywhere near enough emphasis placed on kids and pushing them toward the skilled trades as opposed to, you don't have a life unless you have a university degree. And it starts with guidance counseling right at the schools. And there needs to be a shift in the focus. That's my main issue, Rob, and thanks for hearing me out.
But again, Manny's point was he thought there was too much focus on, social justice activism and not enough focus on, the basics of, what he called core educational skills. We'll stop here. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback, our open line phone segment, 1-833-668-2577. And of course, we're talking about public education today. The state of the public education system with another school year winding down, summer vacations for all those lucky students about to begin. But obviously some problems in the education system, and we're trying to flush those out today. With your help, give us a call. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Public education. That's what we've been talking about today with another school year winding down. What's your assessment of the public education system where you live? We've heard it from teachers today. Top complaints included an inability to provide much one-on-one time with students because of larger class sizes, increasingly being asked to help students with special needs, don't have enough access to follow-up support from other support staff, whether it's counselors or therapists. Another thing that we've learned over the years is workload. This is a common complaint across the country that the actual school day is one thing, but just because the bell rings at the end of the school day doesn't mean a teacher's school day is done. They often end up having to bring work home. They say it compromises work-life balance, can put a strain on family relationships. Not enough prep time. Heard that from a previous caller. Not enough prep time for the school day. Not getting compensated for the amount of prep time that needs to be done. And again, lack of basic materials, basic resources to have a functioning classroom setting. To Listowel, Marge is up next. Is it Marge?
Hi,
or
Rob.
Marge? Yeah, hi there. Hi, Marge.
Hi.
What would you say?
I hear an awful lot of blaming on the education system rather than maybe parents taking some responsibility for their children at home.
Okay.
I seriously believe that it starts at home. There's no disciplining happening anymore. Kids, even if they're given homework, they don't do it, and there's no consequences for it. In the school system, they're not allowed to use basically any form of discipline anymore. As soon as they do, parents are very quick to badmouth a teacher online. Part of the problem is social media. And then, yes, like I honestly feel it's not so much the education system as it is the parenting system.
Very interesting.
Yes,
Yeah,
I have a daughter in the education system, and I've had many talks with her, and she said there's basically nothing they can do with unruly children, and it disrupts the entire classroom. I honestly think every parent out there that wants to blame the education system, they should start looking at their parenting first.
Okay. Well, we have been doing some reporting on how violence in the schools is becoming a major issue, a growing problem with aggressive and violent students, and even, as you say, aggressive parents that sometimes if they think there's something going wrong with their students, it could never be the student's fault. It has to be the teacher's fault or the administration's fault. And this can even, as you say, it can lead to, it becomes a thing on social media. It can take a life of its own on a life of its own on social media, right?
Right. And as far as, you've had a few callers calling in saying that guidance counselors should be, directing kids to get in the trades. But, what's wrong with the parents encouraging their kids to get into the trades? Like everything can't be on the back of the school board. It really starts at home.
Very good point. Very good way to look at it. Yes.
Encouraging your kids to do things at home, like everything starts at home.
Okay. Everything starts at home. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. Good to hear from you, Marge. Wakar in Calgary.
Yeah.
If I'm saying that right. Yes. Hi there. What would be your opinion?
Hi, my name is Wakar. I'm running the CB election this fall in the city also. I'm from the Calgary.
Okay.
My observation is, first of all, the kids who are going to school post-COVID era, they come back with a lot of mental health issues.
Okay.
The interruption happens because some of the younger adults, they are using their cell phones at school also, and they are partially attentive as well. And then they have been found. I myself have 4 kids. They all are in CB. There have been cases where kids, they have Instagram accounts, and then there's a private Instagram accounts. They bully the child, and then they put those videos of bullying on the Instagram videos and social media. Teachers cannot do much about that, but I would recommend having someone in the school as one peace officer for a district or maybe a couple of schools who can look into those matters and have guidance with the kids.
Okay.
For the mental issues, we should have a nurse or a social worker for a district of education board, schools which she or he can go and have chat with the kids about what's going on in their life and stuff like that to give them guidance. This is one point. The second point is that our kids, they are graduating high school, but they waste their 1 or 2 years in upgrading to what they wanted for future because they were never provided those guidelines in school. They were just spending time as if bell rings up, and they go and bell rings up, they come home, but they don't have any plan as to what they need to do post grade 12. The actual life starts opening in front of them, and then they are not having a qualification for a university, not a trade, not even a post-secondary.
Right. So maybe more career, a better focus on career planning or something like that? Okay.
Yeah, they should be right on board after high school. Why should be that wasting 2 years of their life in upgrading, and then they say, okay, I can't do university at all. I need to go to post-secondary school, and then I need to do a math, which I didn't do it before. So why not to give them some launching pad right from the grade 12, where they could be guided and they just land up into the choice of the school. Of course, their parents' input should be there, and then their own, like the previous caller said, the parents should be having part in it, but they should accept not everyone can go into university. So why not why not to go ahead and select some other path instead of wasting time? That's what my great emphasis would be. And I have talked to a lot of parents as well, and in coming election, if I'm selected, I'm going to take that to the CB as a parent's point of view, because this is one of the role of the trustee.
We'll see what happens. And I won't charge you for the election ad, but thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling.
Thank
okay, fair enough.
Nice
bye-bye. It's, at least you're interested. That's good enough. At least you care. 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback, talking about public education issues today here at the end of another school year. Join the discussion, will you? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How would you describe the state of the public education system these days, now that another school year is coming to an end? 1-833-668-2577 to Diane, up next in Calgary. Hi, Diane.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Diane. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. So
that's good.
I just have to say, in response to the previous guest, all schools in Alberta, Catholic and Calgary or the board, have a counselor. And all of the students have access to the Alberta webpage about occupations called ALIS.ca. I think the problem lies in that pre and post COVID, students, especially in high school, don't know how to do basic math. They don't know, and I'm telling you, I've been in the classroom, they don't know what 5 into 50 is, or half of 5, without a device. And now I'm finding out some of the students don't know how to write, and they don't know how to sign their name. And this is all because of devices. Can you imagine having a health program and the doctor turns around and has to look for his cell phone to figure out what the medication would be for your kilogram? They don't do it that way. And I don't want anybody that has to have a device in a healthcare program that doesn't know basic math. And it's a lot of the problems. The parents don't know kids are skipping school. The school cannot flunk them if they pass the diploma exams in grade 12. So I can't tell you how many students don't attend classes grade 10, 11, and 12. They're off working or whatever. Then they show up to do their diplomas and they get a pass.
But you're saying there are students who make it all the way to high school and they're lacking basic math skills, basic literacy skills?
Oh yeah. When we get them in post-secondary, and they don't even know basic math, they don't know spelling of basic words, and they're in a healthcare program, it's a real serious problem. And I think we need to go back years ago, I think it's 2 decades, where parents wanted kids not to be flunked or held back. If your child isn't doing good and you want to hold them back, you literally have to fight, and I mean fight, with the school board to have that child held back, and so they can get what they are learning and be able to move on from there. It's a mess right now, and I blame the parents of the kids that they've changed this whole system where the kids, it wouldn't be fair for them to be held back, or it wouldn't be fair for them to be failing math or something. And where are the parents? I mean, I agree with the teachers. There's only so much they can do.
Yeah.
That the parents need to be supporting, and knowing where their kids are. But also, I think that every time a union wants an increase, it's either doctors, nurses, or teachers. What about the frontline people that support and do all this work for these people? It's been 10 years with 1% increase, and they're fighting over getting another 3 years. They keep getting their increases, and they get significant increases. They're not even happy with 3% offered.
Okay. Well, you highlight a system that is of great concern. Thank you, Diane, for your call to Kitchener now. And Josh is in Kitchener. Hi, Josh.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How is it in Kitchener?
It's pretty good over here. Now, I'll say, I graduated the high school program down in Ontario last year, and I moved to post-secondary this year. And I'll say, so sort of coming from a gentleman with quite a bit of experience, first-hand experience, just graduating last year, I'd say the school board and sort of our education system were soft, and I think we almost think everyone's a winner. There's no losers. No one can really lose in the system that we have set up right now. Everyone has to succeed and advance to the next level, even if you're not quite ready to make that next step. It's not really preparing you for sort of the real world and what's out there after you finish your secondary school.
Okay. The previous caller highlighted absenteeism. I mean, for example, if you miss school, would anybody notice? Anybody care? Would you get in trouble for something like that?
Well, at my school particularly, you wouldn't get in trouble. I mean, there's definitely kids who'd skip on a regular, but there's hall monitors. They're all older ladies, and they're kind of walking around. They're trying to patrol, but you can't when the kids are not at school. What are you going to do? I mean, if you don't go to class before you're 18, the school will call your parents, but a lot of the kids who are sort of known skippers in the class, they just sort of make sure they block the school's number in their parents' phone, and their parents wouldn't have an issue. I mean, it's a parent's responsibility to make sure the kids are doing their homework, sort of staying up to speed. But then I think we're not quite learning all the necessary stuff. It's not the teacher's fault, but it's more the curriculum's fault in preparing us for what's coming next in sort of our after high school education, whether you're going into the healthcare field, the math, no matter what you're going into. I don't think you necessarily have all the basics you need. I got into sort of university, and I was shocked sort of how strict, how stern they are. It's kind of, I mean, I was prepared from home life and sort of being raised that way. But for someone who's not raised that way, it would be very shocking and very different.
Kind of a wake-up call.
School.
Yeah, a wake-up call. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Very interesting. I'm glad things are going well, Josh. Thank you for your call today. Be right back with one or two more calls on today's edition of Talkback as we talk about the state of public education. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
And to Dallas in Cambridge today as we conclude our discussion today about the public education system. Hi, Dallas.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have to agree pretty much with the last three callers. I really loved Marge's comments.
Okay.
And, of course, the last caller. There is not enough going on at home anymore.
Okay.
Well, I don't know on a per capita basis, let's say, but I'm going to tell you a quick story. When my eldest son was in grade 8, and this is going back a number of years, I walked in the house. He was doing some homework, and I walked up and asked him what he was doing. He said, "Well, I'm doing some math." I looked over, and there was a calculator sitting on the table. I said, "What are you doing with that?" He said, "Well, the teacher says we can use it." I picked the calculator up, and I said, "Not in this house until you show me you can do it on a piece of paper."
Wow, okay.
And I worked with the kid for two weeks, and he could do it all, and I gave him the calculator back. And they did the very same thing with my younger son 2 years later. I understand that, a lot of parents, well, we're all busy, but you have to take that time. I mean, back then I was busy and the wife was busy too, but you have to take that time and sit your child at the table and go over what they're learning. and actually see what they're learning. And what they're not learning, pass on what you know. And that's exactly what I did. I taught my two boys how to actually use a set of encyclopedias, because I had a set of encyclopedias from 1967, right. The Book of Knowledge, right. And the two of them loved it.
Okay.
They literally loved it.
Yeah.
You know, and education these days are not like that, clearly. You know, they're too busy about trying to quell the herd, if we will. Like, oh, well, this group has got to have that group's got to have that. Well,
okay, not sure about that, but you think are we expecting then, Dallas, too much of the education system? Are we putting maybe too much responsibility on the schools and the teachers, and not doing enough at home? Is that what you think is going on? Part of the problem, maybe.
That's the large part of it, I would say. Yes.
Okay.
Ultimately, when I was going to school, there was 30 people in the classroom. When the teacher walked in the room, they got respect. Simple as that.
Oh, yes.
And there was never any issues. The boys would have their little fights out in the yard at lunchtime, but that was about it. There was never any violence against teachers and such. It all boils down to the granny state where the parent is not allowed to discipline the kid, and the school is not allowed to discipline the kid.
Okay.
And so it becomes a vicious circle, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you think more needs to be done on the home front. It has to start there.
Do.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that, because that's been a popular opinion today. Thank you so much, and thank you for all of your calls. Great start to the week. For Talk Back, very busy news day, lots to bring you up to date on. We'll do that next, and be back tomorrow with more of your calls and new topics. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio